suggestion. That's totally cool.
Sounds good.
So I just came off doing a Feldenkrais lesson, which actually kind of got me a bit angry, just because of the explanation. I thought was so lacking.
So you're Feldenkranky is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying, yeah?
I will share that with my study mate. Yes,
Okay.
I'm Feldenkrais.
Yeah, I've got no copyright on that, so.
No, but rush to do it, right? Yeah, no, just this question of like we, you know, when we do weight shift, and we've talked so much about like how our weight enters the foot so that we have stability, so that we have balance, you know, in all the one-legged kind of balance moves that we do. What would you say is most important to create that sense of stability that creates, you know, because the litmus test in Feldenkrais is that something's reversible. So in this lesson, a lot of it was lifting a foot to put it on a chair and bringing it back, and at any time having that reversible. So meaning you can't just drop it, you know, you can't clunk it on the chair, that you have this sense of stability that creates the balance. And she talked about that as if it was apparent to all, you know, like what the dots were connecting. And even though I was capable to do it, I didn't have a sense of like how the explanation left me Feldenkranky. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And again, feel free, as I'm explaining, you know, if other thoughts come up or comments or further questions, or if you want to go down a slightly different avenue than what I'm going down, again, jump in anytime. So, I mean, that's a really good drill. That's actually a good definition too. It's reversible. I would say that's a definition of balance and control. So I think that goes actually a little bit beyond balance per se. But I mean, certainly that's a good drill, and if you're able to reverse things, you've got good balance and good control. And what that will tend to do is it'll tend to make it more muscular. So if I was to make a differentiation, it would be that, and let's use balancing on one leg as kind of the litmus test, as you say. I want from my perspective, at least at this point, my balance is coming from not a muscular strength or even an inner ear adeptness. My balance is increased, and my balance happens for me and to me. Better balance happens to me the more I can relax, sink, and ground. And then that will automatically on its way to working with that, create strength, create better inner ear. So as far as how do I get stability for balance, how do I have stability on one foot? Of course, going rooster stands on one leg and other things are really good vehicles to work with this. So maybe we'll use a move like that. But I would say to approach, because there's many different angles with which to approach this. And again, reversibility is one angle. What I would say is groundedness, rootedness, sinking. So maybe we'll just touch upon that a little bit now. So if you raise one leg, doesn't matter how far it is right now, far up. But again, contrasting, let's tighten the knee a little bit, have it almost locked or almost locked, and come up. And now when of course, my balance isn't as good when I do that, but actually, it was not as bad as I thought it would be. So even though I'm compromised or up, I'm able, especially if I concentrate, able to keep my balance, have quote unquote good balance, but now it's more muscular. So that's why I'm kind of making that distinction, because I might be reversible and do all these kinds of different things, but I'm holding myself to do that. So it's a muscular contraction and control. So that's not the best balance. It's not the kind of quality that I want in balance. So I can be uptight and my balance isn't as good. I have to try harder. And the trying harder is a muscular, and if I have some not too bad balance, I can actually keep balance, but I'm doing it very muscularly and very jerkily. Contrast that with taking the muscle concept out of it. Can I sink my weight through my feet, through my foot? And of course, the knee will unlock and soften, shoulders will drop, belly will release. And it creates a wider energy platform. My energy spreads out. My energy feet, my energy platform, my energy base spreads out. If I'm having balance through control and muscular, I have to be very, very fine on this pole, but my base is just this. Energetically, it's like my base expands. I become like not even more than it's like a landing. It's like Apollo 11 on the moon. All those things sticking out. So how do I have stability, balance in general, and specifically on one foot? It's how much sinking you can allow. Back to a huge part of our standing practice is about sinking chi. Relaxing down specifically, sinking chi. Sinking down, relaxing down. So that's a huge part. In fact, that's the major energetic purpose for standing work. And so that just happens to be kind of the approach for balance on one foot. Is can I settle the weight, sink the weight, rest the weight? And again, when I start to do that, I feel I have an energetic base that goes out. So not just down rooting, straight down, nice and deep. That's helpful. That's part of it. But I also get the sense of this.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, because I've always felt like we've talked about rooting in the past. I'm not really clear that I know what that is, to be honest. But you're talking here about something beyond rooting.
Okay, so again, I'm glad you said that, because no doubt you're verbalizing for the multitudes, for maybe everyone or many, many people. So let's address that, because it should be addressed, right? It needs to be addressed. That question is there. The question needs to be asked. So conceptually, intellectually, rooting, of course, means grounded, settled, stable, physically secure, solid. Energetically and chi-wise, it means that you've penetrated the ground. And I, of course, I know that you've heard all the imageries and things. Imagine, it's like your legs are a tree trunk and roots going into the ground. We said things like you can imagine that the roots going to the ground, or you can imagine that your feet are actually below the floor, so you're up to like maybe mid shins or close to your knees, down below the surface of the floor. It's another imagery it's often used. Or simply sinking your chi, your mind or your chi, down below the ground. And various levels. It could be 3 feet, 4 feet below the ground. Some people will go past and beyond that. All those things we've probably all been exposed to. So I would say that energetically, that's a reality. Now, so literally, you extend a root down energetically into the ground. So, like everything else, people tend to start visually, which is not the best. You have, if that's the way you have to start, that's probably a lot of people, if not most people, they visualize that. But as we've said many times, what's far superior to visualization is feeling. You send your feeling down, you send your will down, your feeling down. And so you start, and where your feeling goes, where your will goes, is where the chi flows. So I imagine that I exist below the floor, not just above the floor, but also below the floor. That I extend, just like I extend, my energy body extends beyond the peripherals of the skin. That's in all directions. So I extend somewhat below the floor. I exist somewhat below the floor. And then I can extend that consciously. I can manipulate that and extend that. So there is your energy body can extend below the physical floor. And eventually you can start to feel sending your will there and sending your feeling below the floor. Now, just like any other aspect of Tai Chi, any other concept or principle besides rooting, any other concept, just extending Qi, extending Qi, flowing out, just like anything else, it gets, at first it's just a feeble idea, a feeble visualization. It's not necessarily much reality to it or much physicality to it, and it often doesn't translate to a lot of palpable effect. But as you develop the mind-body connection, develop the mind-chi connection, the yi, intention, and chi, that gets stronger and stronger and stronger, so that when you have an intention, there is a tidal wave of chi and feeling that's mobilized rather than just a trickle. So what I mean in this regard is that when you practice a lot of, we're back to the primacy of standing work, and throughout your Tai Chi work, but standing work is where we get to isolate and microscope these things and work on them very directly, consciously, in an isolated manner. One of those isolated things we work on is sinking, literally melting and pouring our tissues down. We get better at song, which is releasing. We get better at sinking, and that's sinking the chi, but it literally means releasing the tissues. So everything settles and sinks. So that, because gravity is always working, if we're not uptight, if we're not solid, frozen like ice, and tight, if we're released and relaxed, which is song, completely released and relaxed, then everything settles down because gravity is always working. That will naturally really anchor us and ground us and root us. So what I'm saying is there is the mental, energetic sending down, the root down, but it doesn't mean that has any real effect for a period of time because the body is still tight. Again, the mind-body connection is still developing, and what the mind and feeling doesn't mean all these changes are happening because of that yet. But as we get better at not only sending the mind, extending the will, extending the feeling, but the body changes. We're talking a lot about how the body has to be changed and transformed. As that changes and transforms, so our body becomes more sung and we're able to sink and release the tissues, that's when the root really starts to happen. You will feel it. But until then, we can't really feel it because we're kind of tight or frozen up. So as is typically the case, there's two aspects or two main aspects, two big aspects in all these developments and experiences. One is the mind and being able to be better at sending or extending, better at sending the will, which really later becomes feeling. So we'll call that mind. So developing the mind aspect, then developing the body aspect. The body has changed, transformed, cultivated, released, opened. The body has changed, transformed to a certain degree. And so now it's more responsive to whatever the stronger mind is now doing. So whatever that stronger mind, stronger intent, stronger chi flow is doing, the body now is better at reflecting that. So it comes down to stronger intention, stronger chi flow, but also better, deeper releasing, sinking. Any comments about that?
Yeah, I think that what you just said, the last, like the two sort of developmental steps, that's where my question was headed. Yeah, was like that clarity, that cultivation of the intention, and then literally the body that can reorganize with that intention. Like usually we're doing something like, like when we're setting our intention to do a motion or whatever, but this is really just about that the body will obey that attention to head south, right?
Yes, the body will better and better obey that feeling, that intention. Yes, yeah. In this case, to head south. But as well as we continue this cultivation and the changing of this body, the natural direction is down. So then we become more and more rooted all the time, naturally, organically, consistently, because if we're really truly song, if you're released and relaxed, gravity's always working, then our root becomes more and more and more always there. And then we can consciously work on it, develop it, tune into it, and continue to refine it and develop it, yes. But as all these changes occur, refinements, cultivations occur, the root is a natural result. So the root is a consequence, is an effect. So working on sinking, releasing, songing is the cause, and a deeper root is the effect. So again, let me know if you have further thoughts and or questions on that. If we take that specific idea in mind and hang out, and I have been wanting to work on this more specifically anyway, that the huge energetic purpose of standing work is to sink the chi and to song, to release and sink. So right now, of course, we need to have the bones vertical and straight. So we'll take that as a given. So do what you can in the next few moments to align and remember the verticality of the bones, the yangness of the bones, the pristine, vertical, sharp. In fact, you can think of them continually rising. And let's focus on the tissues pouring down, pouring off the bones. The tissues hanging off the bones, melting down off the bones, even pouring. So the tissues are pouring down and off. Let's kind of play with that for a bit, that idea, that feeling. We have to counter that with clear, sharp bones. Otherwise, we just become collapsed and deflated and deadened. So, but the tissues themselves completely showering down off. And as you play with that feeling and quality, just notice what happens with your stability or below the ground or any rootingness that might occur consequentially because of this pouring of tissues. And let me know if you notice anything. So not directly attacking rooting, but working with this song, releasing, pouring of the tissues right now, really kind of using that terminology. Melting the tissues, pouring of the tissues without any collapsation. And see and feel what that does as far as rooting. So one of the things that I notice as I focus on this pouring, melting the tissues down, what does for me, it opens up things. Like I felt my ankles open and release. I felt the torso here, tail, the lower back, this area, open and release. All those mechanical things that we say to do, they were like, oh yeah, I could do more of that. But it happened on its own for me. It's like, as I letting the tissues, let me kind of explain it. I think it's fairly literal. As these tissues released and poured down, it met this little bit of, so things are pouring down. And the other day we're talking about rain running down a pane of glass. So it's kind of relating to another class. So I'm getting a fair good degree of sewing or releasing, pouring the tissues down, tissues melting, pouring down, and it met a little bit of a constriction, like an hourglass, a little bit of a constriction here, and my body had to change and adjust to continue to allow the pouring. And then another place where, oh, okay, the ankles released on their own. They released on their own. They opened on their own. I noticed that the ankles open on their own to be true to that, to continue to allow that pouring to occur. So touching upon this self-adjusting, self-correcting that starts to happen when we work with proper principles, when we work diligently and sincerely on the principles of Tai Chi, we're self-taught and or self-corrected. So that's exactly an example of I was self-corrected. So self-correcting doesn't mean intellectually I do it. It means I'm corrected. So it's an organic from the inside out. You're literally self-corrected by Tai Chi's principles. And as you do more Tai Chi, you become self-corrected, self-taught, more and more so. If you're diligently, sincerely studying and working the principles.
Yeah, I mean, your question about like, so what does this, like, what are you noticing about rooting? I certainly notice a lot more heaviness into the legs and into the contact with the floor feels more dense. Like, not that there was parts of my feet lifted, but it feels like for sure now, even the little underlings of the toe pads feel depressed down in a way they probably weren't at the beginning.
Yes. So those are good sensations, and developing of the Ting, inner sensitivity awareness, to really make those big in your mind. Those little tiny little changes or awakenings or observances, encourage them to be big in the window of your mind. And so your Ting, your inner sensitivity, gets finer, 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 finer. And then you become more and more guided, and again, self-corrected from the inside as that inner sensitivity increases. Let me throw something out, and it may or may not be helpful for you right now, but it's happening for me, especially once this was self-corrected a bit more. So this was released and open, so more sunging, more sinking could occur. I feel as though my opening and releasing abdomen just falls through the feet into the floor. So do that intellectually, do it consciously. So we can kind of maybe trigger things a little bit by faking it till you make it, or you can start with visualization or the idea. But see if you can get your released abdomen below your feet, right at your feet or below your feet, your abdomen. Release your abdomen so it falls through the feet. And notice any changes that occur because of that intention, that idea. Release the abdomen below the feet. I also notice that drags my shoulders down in the proper way, that they're set down.
Well, okay. Yeah, I'm sort of feeling like I have hammer pants on, but that's about it.
Well, so that's good. Okay, so that's the lower body equivalent of the Mickey Mouse hands, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe a sense a little bit more of space kind of around the pelvic floor, that's somehow floating more, like rather than held up.
Ah, nice. Okay, nice. So there's more of a hanging
Mhm.
here. Okay, so very, very good. So that's tremendous inner awareness and sensitivity. And so kind of dwell with that. Let that be big in the window of your awareness. And then release again and more. The next out breath, release that area more. So again, I'm finding when for whatever reason right now, it's targeting the abdomen, it's releasing, releasing, releasing. And I'm feeling that having a consequential effect on pulling my shoulders down as well. And now I'm feeling that it's accentuating that my knees are soft, relaxed, and open. It's touching the knees and encouraging them to be open and released in that soft bend. So it's adding to that. It's increasing that cultivation. And now the ankles are getting the same effect. So certain parts of the body, those parts of the body happen by themselves. And I'm just narrating what's happening. And then other parts, so with this continuing ting, inner sensitivity, then notice parts that, so I'm noticing that's my neck that's not really doing what's happening naturally in these other areas. So then I can use intention, to get that to happen, to be a little bit more open to happening in another area. So that quality of sensation and feeling that it's so clear to me, so palpable to me in the hips and ankles and abdomen, I can now send that to the back of my neck, because in contrast, it's clear that it's not happening to the same degree in other areas. So I can send that feeling to other areas. And lo and behold, what that does is that opens up that area that wasn't doing it as well. So that opens that up a bit. And it just adds more to what was happening before, to the areas that were. This is the cultivation process. This is how the standing process works. Like what I'm narrating here. This is the, and of course, for this has to be, we have to be standing for more than 2 or 3 minutes for this to be happening, and for me to follow this train of events, and the cascading events, and then consciously using encouraging and adding to that chain of events by including other areas that aren't as participatory in the event. So of course this takes a time and a process and diligence, and so that's why standing needs to be done, and for a good amount of time, because the standing allows us to isolate and to microscope into these principles. And again, if I wouldn't get to this in 3 minutes of standing. And now that we've been doing this for a number of minutes, it starts to cascade and perpetuate itself. And then I can add a bit again with and intention, and kind of trigger other areas too, which again cascades and triggers other things. And that will only happen after a few minutes of working with this. Now let's take this into a little bit of movement. Let's say stationary parting horse's mane. And again, it's less important that we go to a full, complete end and everything's clear and we're doing parting horse's mane proper. It's just the vehicle. I just want to take this now. How much can I keep it? And notice how much I lose once I'm doing a little bit of movement. So everything that we're doing is standing, everything. The whole idea is then to take this into our Tai Chi. So if you can imagine, just to kind of highlight kind of the theme of the last couple or few classes, normal body, a normal person can't do Tai Chi and can't be doing Tai Chi. If all these things that we just talked about weren't happening at all, and we don't have a concept of them happening, we're a normal body, and I'm doing Tai Chi movements, I can learn the choreography of Tai Chi, and a person can put me in the shape of the Tai Chi movement, but this is not Tai Chi. I'm doing slow motion calisthenics. It's not Tai Chi. The principle is that we isolate so we can study and develop and it has to be in the standing because it's so isolated, it's so microscoped. It's simplified because we're not moving. Then we have direct organic experience. And okay, that's what that feeling is. Oh, that's what that word means. Oh, so we have a direct personal organic experience. We take that into Tai Chi, and then we get also better at noticing when we lose it. So just taking some of the feelings, qualities that you experienced and bring this into a little bit of movement. Can you allow this feeling, idea of rooting, can I apply that to kind of 1 foot at a time, perhaps, because we're shifting weight? Or you might more diffusely feel it through both feet. But as you feel more pressure into 1 foot, and as you release, you kind of allow that experience of rootedness will naturally go deeper because the weight pressure is increasing. And if you can release and stay open, it'll send the root further down. But as you might notice, it takes a lot of concentration and proper strength to be able to keep these things in movement. There's far more, because it's not microscoped as much, there's far more things that can go wrong. There's far more dimensions and angles that are happening, movement that's happening so far, so the old habits are going to come in right away. Instantly, they're going to come in. And so we get better and better at noticing that. Again, that's another importance why you have to go slow so we can catch those things. But eventually, you want to be able to do this at different speeds and even normal everyday movement speeds. And we get better at catching those things and changing those things as we're transporting ourselves around in the world. So let's kind of go back to the original idea or question is stability, especially standing on 1 foot. So let's go into golden rooster stands on 1 leg. Again, you can bring the knee up as high or low as you want. It's best to keep it lower than what you normally would do to start with, because you're focused on the quality of the experience and the principles. You're not focused on the external and where that's supposed to be there, where that's supposed to be there. That's for a different time. It's a different training. So we're bringing the qualities and principles that we do in standing. And this, one of the specifics that we're doing today is grounded, rooted, below the floor. So just a little bit of this movement to play with, to explore, to experience, to study that quality, those qualities through this a little more challenging movement. Going on 1 leg, another aspect is it's related to the pouring. But try this physically, mechanically as a contrast thing. Lengthen and straighten the lower back. Accentuate that. Accentuate the lengthening and straightening of the lower back. Not only will it lift the knee more for you, but it'll sink you down the standing leg automatically for you. So as I release and lengthen the lower back, it's like it sends my tailbone right into the ground. So lengthening or releasing the lower back, you may be able to find that that directly increases your root or your stability. Releasing, lengthening the lower back. Notice your hands. You have equal awareness in both hands. Now, that was done for me. As I released and lengthened the lower back, poof, my hands became equally energized, totally equally, as if they're one piece. What does lengthening, opening the lower back do for your shoulders? What happens to this elbow, this arm? Another thing that's happening is that when I release, extend, lengthen this, it rolls that elbow forward. So it's not conducive to things coming in and pulling in, which is the normal thing, right? Pulling in. That's actually rolling my elbow out for me. So that Tai Chi shape then happens for me, to me, just happens. As I'm doing certain things correctly, other things are corrected and informed. So that elbow rolls forward for me as I drop tailbone, lengthen lower back. Because again, the normal thing would be to come in, tighten. So as you do those proper principles, notice what it does for you. And today, because one of the triggers that we're really working on is, one of the themes is rootedness, groundedness. Again, see if you can keep part of your consciousness below the ground, below the foot. Now, if this didn't work for you previously, a few moments ago, it might not help you now, but this feeling of releasing the abdomen below the ground, again, I feel that really anchors and stabilizes what I'm doing. Maybe one other thing before we finish, possibly, let's see how this goes. Going into chop with fist, this is related to, another day we might work on, which we haven't directly done for a long time, but Tai Chi stepping or tiger trap stepping. So we don't just overcommit and just fall into the step. We're actually, again, we own our alignment. And we're just settling straight down vertically with gravity. So this is going to be related to that. I'm not throwing my mass around. So that's not, so Tai Chi should be, doesn't mean that's what everybody's doing, but Tai Chi, it's much more, this is probably a better word than this, I'm sure, much more controlled. It's much more present, much more unidirectional or omnidirectional. This is unidirectional. I'm walking. I'm exaggerating a bit, but I'm shifting my weight. It's unidirectional. Tai Chi is omnidirectional. Whichever direction you're moving in, it doesn't matter. It's omnidirectional. So this is related to that and related to what we've been doing so far today. So chop with fist, rather than falling into that front heel, which would be something like this, falling into that front heel, into that front leg. That's going to tend to happen, right? Here we're on one leg. We're not using a balance step. We go to the heel. We're going to tend to, oh, thank goodness, my heel is touched down finally. To a less obvious degree, that's probably what's happening. If we're doing the same things we're working on today, then at any point, it's self-possessed. It's complete. It's omnidirectional. It's grounded at any point, at any point, at any point, at any point, at any point. It's grounded. It's grounded. It's grounded at any point. So maybe try maybe the first one or two, notice how much maybe I'm just throwing my mass forward, or how much I'm just, oh, thank goodness my foot went in front of me, because if it wasn't there, I'd fall flat on my face. So thank goodness I got the foot there. To what degree is that happening? Because it's happening to one extent or another. And then compare that to being self-possessed, vertical alignment that keeps you integrated and safely aligned. I'm not vulnerable over and out of balance, hanging over a precipice. I'm safely aligned. And I can just let everything pour down and through my upright alignment. And so I can just always have that going on. So then everything becomes even and full, omnidirectional. Everything becomes even and full, not falling forward, but much more global, omnidirectional. So stop that foot from touching down, stop that heel from touching down, and check that. Am I hanging? Am I pouring the tissues down? Am I entering into the ground? Or am I holding up, especially because I'm stepping, with this foot in front? So at every point, stop 2 or 3 times, and it should be the same as standing work. Standing on one leg is the same as standing work, just like we did Golden Rooster. So are you taken care of by those principles? So you have that integrity, you have that dignity. So that's natural dignity at every point. So we're never out of integration, disintegrated, disdignified. We're always dignified, integrated. Upright bones, tissues, relaxing, melting, pouring down at every moment.
Okay, something to work on.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So let's just do a little releasing just to close the class. Contrasting the pouring of the tissues down, soft melting tissues down, contrasting that with the bright, sharp uprightness of the skeletal structure, and relax in that differentiation. And letting the arms and hands now are also given over to gravity, the vertical alignment of gravity. So you got the vertical line, very, very sharp, fine line, goes straight through your body, right down the center. And then also be aware of that same vertical, right down the center lines, very fine, very sharp, through the center of each arm, hand, and finger. So right through the middle finger, the tip of the little finger. Breathe in deep, fill the belly. Breathe out, release, and gently rock out. Okay, any thoughts or comments?
Sorry, Luann, I took that over.
No, I enjoyed that. Thank you. I noticed, at one point when things were, I can't move that from the abdomen fast, kind of, but as I went deeper, then I found that yang skeletal structure go upwards more. So it was kind of an interesting feeling. So yeah, it was good. Good question there, Cheryl.
Okay.
Oh, that truly, it makes for content.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is important for everybody, including myself. It gave me an opportunity to work on this myself, to delve into it as I'm narrating. So it's a source of content. So it's it's ultra important.
I love the idea of the self-correcting. You know,
Yeah.
just it's a hopeful thing. You know, like it's I don't know what the word is. There's something sort of optimistic and about that, thinking that we're guiding, you're guiding us, and we're going there, and our body wants us to go there. I mean, it's a really lovely concept, right? As you
Yeah.
feel it becomes more of a reality too. So.
Yeah, that it becomes your self-sourced, not
Yes,
self in terms of the
yes.
mind or the ego, but you have your own source. It comes out. It comes out. So that is a beautiful thing. It's like there's a dominion to that. There's again an integrity and dominion to that, and that each one of us on this path has their own connection point, has their own source, connection to source. It's all the same in the sense that we're all in the same universe. It's the same principles. It's the same universal principles, and these experiences are universal. They're the same, and each one of us has a potential source to that connection to that source. Each and every one of us. Mhm. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
We'll see you.
Have
next
a good
time.
holiday season. Yeah.
Yes, yes, to both of you.
Yeah. All right. Take care.